This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today we have a special guest, one of the most memorable characters in WWE history. He's also had a match for WCW. He's a legend over in Europe, and he's appeared for ECW. None other than Mantar. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's nice to see you. And I didn't know that you were actually an amateur wrestler when you were young. Could you start by telling us a bit about your childhood and some of your sporting accomplishments?
Absolutely. Yeah, so my parents adopted me as a baby in Omaha, Nebraska in 1968. And when I was born, I was only 5 pounds, 4.5 ounces. And my mom's dad was holding me and he was like, Bob and Marcia, you guys are going to be in for some problems. And he was like, what are you talking about, Dad? And he's like, this kid's going to be huge. He's going to eat you out of house and home. He said, Dad, what do you mean? He's 5 pounds, 4.5 ounces. You got to be kidding me. He says, no. He says, look at the size of his hands and his feet. And they just all kind of laughed it off. But, my grandfather was right. I was freshman in high school and I was 310 pounds. And I think that was the only day that I was little was the day I was born because I think this day two I was 12 pounds or more. Right. So, I was all my friends in school. They all played little league football, and I was always 100 pounds over the weight limit, so I had no chance of playing football. And so a friend of ours said, "Bob, why don't you get your son into playing some ice hockey?" And I was like, "Okay." I was five. I tried it, fell down, boom, hit the ice, fell down, got up, fell down, got up, fell down, and then one time I stood up and I just took off like a rocket ship and. I played hockey till I was 16 years old, and I was always one of the top two guys on the team. I was always one of the fastest guys on the team, and I was always one of the best kids in the league. And I had dreams of being an NHL player. I thought, I wanted to be Bobby Orr, Tony Esposito, Gordie Howe. I wanted to be people like that. Great Wayne Gretzky. That's who I was dreaming to be. And I got into seventh grade and junior high. And my woodshop teacher said, "Hey," he says, "you're a big kid." He says, "Have you ever thought about going out for wrestling?" And I said, "No, not really." And he was like, "Well," he said, "would you like to come out?" I says, "Well, I'd have to ask my parents." And he said, "Okay." So I asked my dad. He said, "Yeah, you can try out." So I stayed after school the next day. And the minute I grabbed somebody and threw him across the room, man, I was all in because that was the greatest feeling ever. Just to grab a hold of somebody and they had no idea what the hell was coming. They were just going for a ride. And I really took to wrestling right away. And I won two city championships in my eighth grade year. I was part of the USA Olympic junior world team. And I was the only competitor for the USA team to wrestle both freestyle and Greco Roman. We wrestled out at the World Championships in Cal State Fullerton. And I won two world championships the next 2 weeks out in California. And as a freshman to be, I was slated to be a 1986 Olympic wrestler. That's how good I was as an amateur wrestler, and ended up winning two state championships in high school, four-time state qualifier. I took third in the junior nationals after losing 30 pounds in 10 days out of 157 people. So yeah, I mean, I really love amateur wrestling. So sometimes when I was in the ring as a professional, I'd get a little excited, and I'll shoot a single leg takedown on your ass, and I'll surprise you out of nowhere and take you down. And they're like, "What the hell was that, Mike?" I'm like, "That was a single leg takedown, baby, right out of the textbook." You know, that's I love the belly to belly suplex. That was one of my textbook moves that I did in the ring for the WWF, and that's one of the textbook moves that I did on the amateur wrestling mat as well. So once I got a hold of you, there was nothing you could do. If I wanted to send you for a ride, you were on your way. You couldn't do nothing about it.
Yeah, I was
So with
watching
the
some of your
wrestling,
matches today, and I noticed that your belly to belly was more of a shoot than a work belly to belly.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to wait for you to leave your feet. Once I got my hands locked, I'm just going to step in, take one step into your groin, and I'm going to snatch you right up through the air and send you flying. So there's no hesitation there. You just lock it up, boom, step in and throw them. So um, I prefer to throw over my left hand shoulder as opposed to my right for some reason. I'm just more comfortable the opposite way. But yeah, that's one of my textbook moves. That was something I was famous for. The coaches in high school used to tell their guys, "Watch out for the head throw, because I'll grab your head and hip toss you in a second." And no matter what they did, they just couldn't stop it. And I pinned a lot of people. Had a high school pin record my freshman year for Ryan High Catholic High School in Omaha, Nebraska. I think I had like 24 pins as a freshman, and so that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and Nebraska, for anyone that doesn't know that's watching this in a different country than the US, that's an amateur wrestling hotbed. It's not one of the weak states in amateur wrestling.
No, we're right at the top of the game. Nebraska, Iowa. Iowa. You got Dan Gable. Everybody knows who Dan Gable is. He's one of the greatest of all time, and so it's amateur wrestling is in my blood, and I don't know what my mom and dad did, but I'm sure that they threw around somebody sometime or another, because it's God gifted me with a lot of athletic ability and talent, and I'm very blessed and very fortunate to be able to do what I love as long as I did.
Now, I understand you actually got kind of brought into the wrestling business by being a paper boy and meeting Mad Dog Vachon, who was your neighbor.
Yeah,
That's
it's a true
one of my
story.
favorites.
Yeah, true story. So hockey practice used to be at like 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, 5:30 in the morning on Saturday. And my dad was a mailman, and he started work at 5:30. Plus, I delivered newspapers, and I had a couple hundred newspapers on the weekends. So my dad would wake up at like 2:30 o'clock in the morning, and he'd go get the newspapers. He'd come home, wake me up. We'd sit on the tailgate of the truck. We'd wrap all these newspapers, and then we'd go deliver the newspapers throughout the deal. Well, one of the stops was Mad Dog Vachon. And when I was out delivering my papers, I would see him running the streets, to get in shape, to stay in shape for professional wrestling. And so he used to go to the bar sometimes that my dad used to drink at. And I was in there playing pool one Saturday afternoon, and I was probably 10 or 11 years old at this time. And I was playing pool there. My dad was at the bar drinking with his buddies, and all of a sudden the side door opened up. And when the side door opened up, it was, the sun would just blast right inside the whole building. And so you do when somebody opened the door. When you open the door and that sun came through, all you see is a silhouette of this little monster coming through this spark plug coming through the door. And it was Mad Dog Vachon. And I just literally just looked up at him, and I kind of dropped my pool stick. I was like, holy shit, that's Mad Dog. And then he goes and sits down at the bar right next to my dad. And so now I would go up to my dad. So they're sitting there drinking, talking, having a good time. And so I'm, tugging on my dad's pants. And I'm like, Dad, Dad. He was like, Mike, what? And I was like, I'm talking. I was like, Dad, do you know who you're sitting by? He was like, yeah, that's Maurice. It's like, no, 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 that's Mad Dog Vachon. Like, get the hell away from him. He's going to kill you. And so at that time, my dad said, Maurice, I'd like to introduce you to my son. And I started to take off, and my dad grabbed me by the collar and pulled me back and said, this is my son, Michael. And I introduced myself to him, and I was scared shitless. I used to watch this guy, bite, scratch, claw people, in the ring every Sunday morning, in front of the TV on my underwear, watching him just beat the shit out of people every day. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, would you like to come to the wrestling? And I was like, sure. And this is when he was wrestling in the AWA. And So I remember he told my dad, he said, okay, Bob, he said, here's 2 tickets. He says, at the intermission, he says, or after the first match, he says, bring Mike down to the curtain and he can hang out with me and then you can come pick him up after the intermission. It's like, okay, that's great. So my dad took me down there. Said, yeah, can we speak to Mad Dog? And Maurice came, got me, took me back there. The very first person he introduced me to was Andre the Giant. I'll never forget it. He knocked on his door. Boss, I have a friend of mine. And he took me in there, man. And I remember I was standing there and Andre was sitting down and I was still looking up at him, right? I mean, I was, 11 years old probably. And I was like, holy crap, that was the very first professional wrestler that I ever met. And, I was in love with the sport from that point moving forward, So Maurice had told me, he says, listen, son, he says, go to school, get your education. When you're done with college, come and talk to me. Well, I turned down a full ride wrestling scholarship to Oklahoma University. And I decided to play 2 years of semi-professional football. And then I got right into professional wrestling at 21 years old over in the CWA for Out of Vance. So PN News actually got me that gig.
Okay, so how did you actually get trained for wrestling after football?
So after football, Mad Dog called Eddie Sharkey up in Minneapolis. And everybody knows who Eddie Sharkey is. He's a, famous trainer. He's trained Rick Rude, the Road Warriors, Wayne the Train Bloom. List goes on and on, Charlie Norris. And so I went up there and I was driving back and forth for about a month. And I knew more about wrestling than this guy was teaching me. And so I called Maurice up. I said, Maurice, I says, this is a good place to go. And I know this guy's trained a lot of people. I says, but he's not really hands-on. And I know more than what he's teaching me. And I said, I need to go somewhere and learn. And he says, okay. He says, come on home. And he says, I'll find you another place to go. Well, then he called the great Boris Malenko out of Tampa, Florida, Larry Malenko, Dean and Jody Malenko's father. Everybody knows who Dean Malenko is, man of 1,000 holds. And called him up and said, hey, I got this, great athlete up here, and I'd like to set him down in so he can learn the job. And he said, okay. So I went down there, and I had a guy that backed me in Omaha and gave me like $25,000, paid for my training camp, paid for my living expenses. All I had to do was go down there and learn how to be a professional wrestler. And I spent 10 and a half, 11 months down in Tampa underneath Larry and Jody and Dean's guidance, and met a lot of guys down there. I met Carl Gotch down there. The 1-2-3 Kid was a mainstay down there. Ken Shamrock was in and out of the door down there. There are a lot of people. Dean Malenko, his brother Jody. So it was a great time. Great time.
Did you ever wrestle around with Ken Shamrock, shoot style, since he was also doing shoots?
No, they were trying to train me to do the shoot style wrestling, but Japan at the time I was 400 pounds, and Japan wanted me to lose 50 pounds. And Larry says, well, he says, what do you want to do? And I says, I don't really feel like losing 50 pounds. I says, I'll just stick with what I'm doing. And so I never did go for the shoot style, but there's definitely an art to shoot fighting, and you put some of these holds on people, and either they're going to tap out or you're going to break something.
And as far as wrestling over in Germany, how was that experience, and who were some of the famous people that also went on to become superstars that you worked with in those days?
Oh, wow. All the old school guys have been there. Dino Bravo, Mad Dog Vachon, Vern Gagne. There's JBL's been there. Razor Ramon's been there. Owen Hart's been there. Chris Benoit's been there. The names just keep going on and on and on that have been over to. Everybody's been to Europe, wrestled for Otto Vance over there, and it was really a great time. So at the time, it was probably 19, '92 maybe. And PN News was hot on WCW television. And I had just came out of wrestling training camp in Florida, and he was hot on TV. And I had aunts and uncles calling up my mom and dad, said, "Hey, is that Mike on TV? Is that Mike on TV?" Because at the time, PN News and myself looked a lot alike. I mean, a lot alike. You could hardly tell us apart, actually. And so they said, no, that wasn't him. Well, I went to a local bar. I was on a Friday afternoon with one of my buddies, and we were having a couple beers, and we're drinking. This guy at the corner of the bar, man, just kept staring at me and shit. And we're drinking. My buddy's like, "Man, he's got a problem." I said, "Yeah, if you don't stop, I'm going to knock the shit out of him." So he come over. He says, "Hey, man," he said, "excuse me for staring." He says, "But I'm trying to figure out why my brother's in here and not saying hello to me." It's like, "Your brother, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, my brother." I was like, "Well, I suppose you're going to tell me your brother is PN News, the Rap Master." He was like, "Well, actually, I am." I said, "Now I'm going to knock you out twice. Once for staring and once for lying, motherfucker." And so he was like, "No, no, 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 no." And he pulled out his license. He says, "My name's Johnny New. That's Paul New." He says, "Our parents own New Cheese in Hardington." He was like, "I promise you, man, it's legitimate." So we tried to call him. He never answered the phone. So he said, "Listen, give me your name and number." And he says, "I'll call my brother and let him know that I met you and stuff." And he says, "I'm sure he'll be happy to meet you." And so that's what he did. And Paul called me up a couple weeks later, and we talked. And he was like, "Listen," he says, "we're getting ready to do the Sioux City, Des Moines, Omaha loop." He said, "If you want to pick me up at the airport," he says, "you can hang out with me for the weekend, and I'll introduce you to some of the guys." So after that first weekend of hanging out, I remember brought back to Omaha JYD, the Junkyard Dog, and Robert Gibson and PN News and myself. And so I took them guys, dropped them off the hotel and stuff. And as they were all flying back out of Omaha. And Paul says, "Listen," he says, "give me your information." He says, "Send your pictures to this such and such guy." And he gave me Otto Vance's name and address. And he said, "Whatever you do, tell him you've been there for 2 years. You've been wrestling for 2 years." I said, "Okay." So that was the story I took, and I went there, wrestled my first match in Dortmund, Germany, in front of about 10,000 people, made $6,000, championship match. Place was sold out, man. And it was my very first match ever. Ever. And after the match, um, Otto Vance said to me, he says, "How long you been wrestling, kid?" I said, 2 years. He says, "How long you been wrestling, Mike?" I said, 2 years. He said, "Mike," says, "I'm your boss. You tell me the truth." He says, "I know you haven't been wrestling 2 years." He says, "If so, you've maybe wrestled 10 times a year." He said, "But that don't make a professional wrestler." I said, "Well, honestly," I said, "if you want to know the truth," I said, "I've only had 2 matches, 2 in wrestling camp and this one here." He was like, "Well," he says, "I could tell you were green." He says, "You did a pretty good job, though." He said, "If you really want to learn the business," he says, "I'll keep you on for the next tournament, 38 days. He said, I'll give you $335 a day and I'll pay you every 2 days. Yes or no?" I said, "I'm in." I was sold. And then he just kept bringing me back, bringing me back, bringing me back. And, that's how my professional wrestling career got started, man. It was fantastic. And then when I was over there, Otto would bring in all these big names off of WWF TV that to wrestle in championship matches and so on and so forth. And the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, just got done with his run after the 1-2-3 Kid beat him on Monday Night Raw. And he came over to the championship. And Ted is from the same hometown I am, Omaha, Nebraska. And Sting was actually born in Omaha, Nebraska. And but anyway, Teddy was over there. And, back in Omaha, we call South Omaha boy SOB, where everybody else thinks it means something else. Well, he said, "Hey, I heard there's an SOB in this locker room." And all the boys started looking at him like, "Who's this guy think he is?" And I was like, "Hey, over here." And so we, hugged and everything. And everybody's looking like, "What's going on?" And, they realized that we were from the same hometown. And so I kind of looked after Teddy over there, and we had a great time. And he said, "Listen," he says, you got some athletic ability to you." He says, "I'm sure Vince will love you." He said he loves big guys. He says, "I'll see what I can do for you." And I called him 2 weeks before I came home from Christmas break. And a couple of days after Christmas, my phone rang. It was the WWF office, and the rest was history.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting story of how Million Dollar Man met you. Do you have any other stories about him? Because he's had a lot of negative publicity lately, but obviously your experience with him was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Ted has always treated me with the utmost respect. We're from the same hometown, and some of his cousins are really good personal friends of mine. And I didn't really. We're both part of the Nebraska Professional Wrestlers Hall of Fame, by the way. And I've played golf with Ted in Omaha a few times, and hung out with him over in Europe and stuff, and hung out with him in the locker room in New York, of course. Um, Only talked to him a few times personally on the phone, so I really don't know what his day to day life is. At the end of the day, we all have our weak moments and might do some things or say some things that we're not proud of, but it's just a part of life, and you just gotta move on. You know what I mean? People are too fucking sensitive these days, and so I believe of half of what I hear and less of what I read, so I don't try to I don't judge other people.
Yeah, and he hasn't been found guilty of anything, I don't believe either. So that's something else to take into consideration. I don't think that's gone to court. But I understand for your first couple of matches, they were dark matches against Nikolai Volkov, where you actually went over and you were
Yeah,
just
actually I remember that. Yeah, that was a long time ago. I probably would have forgot that if you didn't just remind me. But yeah, that he
yeah.
was one of my dark matches. Totally forgot about that.
That's rare though to go over a guy in a dark match. Were you already signed by then, or were those actually your first WWE matches?
No, they were actually my first WWE matches. I I had went up and talked to Vince right away. They said we're going to fly up to New York. We'll have somebody pick you up. And I went up and met Vince, and they gave me a contract, and I gave it to my attorney, and we signed it. And then they flew me in, and that's when they did my first dark match. So they had already had tapes of me from CWA over in Europe, and because that's where I was wrestling at all the time, and so they had all the footage that they needed to see from those tapes. So I was pretty lucky in that aspect. I know a lot of guys had a tryout, and had to pass the tryout and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's how that worked out. I guess I was pretty lucky.
Yeah, that's a rare unless you're coming from another major company like WCW. But as you said, 350 a night in Germany in the early 90s. In wrestlers' pay, there's very few places you could get 350 a night in 2022.
No, you're absolutely right. And the thing about it it was if you were in a town, say you were in Vienna, Austria, you were there for 72 straight days. 72 straight days of $335 a day. I mean, that's great money. And you only had 2 days off in between towns. And basically, one day was a travel day and to get set up. And the next day, you relaxed. And the day after that, boom, you were right back at it again, for another 40 days or 50 days or 21 days. Every now and then you get lucky and get a little vacation spot up in the mountains. There was a place that was in Seeboden, Austria, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in. You'd be out in the middle of this lake and you look around you and all you see is these beautiful green mountains. And it was one of the most tranquil things, beautiful things I've ever seen ever. And I'll never forget it, man. And you were deep in the mountains of Austria, up in the Alps, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I enjoyed my time over there. I wrestled over in Europe probably for about a total of 14, 15 years, and I loved it over there.
And what killed the business over there? Just WWE taking over and people don't want to.
WWE, yeah, WWE taking over, and Otto Vance was getting older, and he was always 500 pounds, so his body just started giving out on him, and he just started losing the passion for the business, because he's already made his millions, and so that, I mean, his investment when he paid Vern Gagne $100,000 for the championship belt, he only had it for like a month, but that $100,000 investment to get that belt made him like a fucking god in Austria. And you have to understand the technique of CWA wrestling. We wrestled in rounds over there, and so you only had a minute rest period in between rounds, and it was more wrestling than high flying. It was holds, and it was working those holds, and it was working that arm for three rounds, and you're working that arm for 10, 12 minutes. And these people are fucking buying it. And used to get fined over there. Let's say you got caught cheating, and so the good guy got tired of the bad guy cheating, so the good guy cheated, and so then he got a fucking yellow card, and then he'd get fined 200 Deutschmarks, and which was like $100 at the time, and fans would just run up to the fucking podium and pay that $200 fine because they didn't want to have the wrestler to pay for it, and they thought the shit was real. And after the match, we would divvy it up between the two wrestlers and the referee, and then the speaker would get the little change at the end for putting the gimmick over. But yeah, we would make so much extra money every night, and on the nights that you wrestled a championship match, you would bring home an extra $500, $600, $700 a piece, off of just fines that people came and ran to the table and paid. It was such a fucking scam. It was ridiculous, but that people didn't know any better.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They thought the shit was a shoot, and because you basically did UFC style wrestling, but in a WWE atmosphere. I mean, you wrestled in a 8,000 person wrestling circus tent, and you're there every single night for 72 days. You're wrestling in front of the same people every fucking night, and out of them 72 days, the only bad days that you're going to have is Tuesdays, maybe Wednesdays, because the rest of the nights, it's fucking jam-packed for the whole 2.5 months you're there. Unbelievable. I've never seen another territory do that ever. I mean, Otto had it made over there, and before the tournament started, all the wrestlers were paid already, and so everything that came in the gate was cash money right in his pocket. People thought Otto Vance was a fucking god, and they treated him as such. Every time we went, people kissed his ass. People give us free fucking food and free drinks, and it was crazy. If Otto had a hand in it, it was going to get done, and it was going to get done right. I have to say that Otto wasn't shy about putting money into the business to make money. Right? He was smart. He was a fucking brilliant fucking mind. Brilliant wrestling mind.
There's a fan here that tipped $1.99 and wants to know, what were your thoughts on Owen Hart's death, and where were you at the time?
Wow. What a fucking question. Nobody's ever asked me that. Because when my very first year in Germany, English guy by the name of Tony Sinclair, another gentleman, Dave Fit Finley, was there, was a huge heel in Germany. The main baby faces were Owen Hart and Chris Benoit. And so I was learning the business, and Otto was teaching me the business. So he would put me in a position every night to where I was in a tag team. My tag partner was Dave Fit Finley, and we were wrestling Owen Hart and Chris Benoit in a tag probably 3 nights a week. And these guys taught me the sport of professional wrestling. I learned from the absolute best. I don't care who did what in their personal life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the sport of professional wrestling. And in the sport of professional wrestling, it doesn't get any better than Owen Hart, Chris Benoit, and Dave Fit Finley. That's all I got to tell you. Those are three of the best professional wrestlers ever. And so I had the privilege of working with these guys on a nightly basis, and I would wrestle single matches with Chris Benoit, single matches against Owen Hart. And these guys taught me how to wrestle, how to translate amateur wrestling into professional wrestling, look like a fucking killer, look like a monster, and just, wrestle according to your size. Um, so, I couldn't ask for, anything better. I mean, I'm, like I said, I'm blessed. I'm grateful, had a great career. I think it could have been done differently in the States. My personality and my character would have came out a lot more, but hey, shit happens, and I'm not complaining. I'm living my best life, living in Florida, and I've done everything exciting that I ever wanted to do. So if I died today, I'd die one happy motherfucker. That's all I can say.
So after you were signed, you had your dark matches against Volkov as Bruiser Mastino. Then at what point did they decide you're going to be Mantar? Did they bring you in as Bruiser Mastino and then change their mind, or what was the deal there?
No, they really didn't have. That was the thing. They really didn't have an idea for me, and so they took a bunch of pictures of me, and they came to me with these couple drawings of these characters, and the best one of the lot was Manteur character. And if I would have developed my character, I would have just translated Bruiser Mastino right over to WWF, because I was sporting a suit, I was sporting a fedora, carried a violin case, and I ripped all that shit off with the amateur wrestling singlet, and I was 380 fucking pounds of all man, and I was a killer, and that would have been the gimmick that I would have done for myself, and I'm flattered. A lot of people might not realize this, but Glenn Jacobs, who did the Kane gimmick, at one time, my Bruiser Mastino character was so popular that he decided that he wanted to call himself Bruiser Mastino. So before he was Kane and Isaac Yankem, he called himself Bruiser Mastino for a short stint. So I take that as a compliment.
That is true, because I tried to look you up as that. I did find a few of your ECW matches, but most of the stuff that came up was Kane, who actually I think wrestled in WCW under that name a few times.
Yeah, he did actually. Yep.
So I got to ask, do you recall what some of the other gimmick options were?
Not to my recollection. No, not really. I just know that, I showed up at Monday Night Raw one time in early lunchtime, and they came to me and they said, Mike, look at these drawings. They said, this is what we want to go with here. And so it involved shaving, because at the time they had that fucking bullhead on me. And Vince spent like $100,000 on that fucking bullhead, flew me to Chicago like 4 or 5 times, flew me to New York City 4 or 5 times, and having all these people make this fucking thing. And it was supposed to be like a big Van Vader headgear. And it was supposed to shoot out flames and shit and smoke, and the eyes were supposed to be fucking red. But after they made the bullhead, it was just not menacing. So it would have looked ridiculous to see all that stuff coming out of there. And I remember one time I was at lunch, and Shawn Michaels walked by. He says, "Hey, Vince." He says, "Is this the guy that wears that Bessie the cow headgear?" Oh, sorry, Mantar. You know what? I'm like, hey, man, fuck you, man. I didn't choose that fucking thing. And we just kind of both laughed at it, right? And I think after that, when Vince seen that and seen me laughing at the gimmick too, he got rid of the fucking bullhead, and he came up with me cutting the horns into my head and the face paint, which for me was a lot better than wearing that stupid fucking headgear because it was heavy and it was hard to get in the ring in anyway. Just a fucking pain in the ass. And plus, it really did look like Bessie the cow.
Yeah, and did you have to carry that through customs and stuff at an airplane?
No, they transported it for me. But the thing is, they had me wear a singlet with a set of horns and some eyes, and these fucking things were cut out and sewn onto my singlet, and it looked like something like your kids would put together with Mr. Play-Doh, and they'd be putting together Mr. fucking Potato Head and putting eyebrows on the guy and the mouth and lips, and that's how it fucking looked. And I was like, I gotta wrestle in this shit. This is fucking stupid, comical, but you do what you're paid to do, right? And you try to make chicken salad out of chicken shit the best you can,
They should have had you walk around New York and Chicago in that bullhead or cowhead and done vignettes of that.
Yeah, I mean, should have done something. You know what I mean? Fucking put me in some bullfights or something. I would have fought a bull. I don't care. Fuck.
If it had been a cooler head, it would have gone over better because people remember it. Even though you said
listen, there's no doubt in my mind, when I meet these people sometimes and they're like, Manteur, you are one of my favorite wrestlers. And I'm like, I just think to myself, are you fucking serious? That fucking character was stupid. But they remember it. For whatever reason, they remember it. And Mad Dog Vachon used to say, Mike, it doesn't matter what you do in the ring as long as they remember you. He said, you wonder why I jump around the ring on a fucking, like I'm on a pogo stick and I bite people and I claw people and I scratch people? Because they remember that shit. And so, I just sported the best out of that fucking bullhead that I could, man. And, 30 fucking years later, people still remember that shit.
And I actually saw you once live when I was a kid in Kingston, Ontario, against Duke the Dumpster Drosy back in the lean days of WWE, where I don't even think there was 1,000 people at the show. But when and that was Canadian money too. So you guys,
that made it even worse.
But when I interviewed Duke, he was saying that he saw you once take an unheard of amount of pain pills on a dare or something. Do you remember that?
Oh no, it wasn't on a fucking dare, man. So we were. It wasn't fucking by my choosing. Trust me, bro. Okay, so we were on a California tour. We were out there for fucking seemed like a month, and the whole tour, I had to wrestle the British Bulldog every fucking night, which was a walk in the park, by the way, was some of the easiest money that I've ever been paid in my entire life. Because Davey Boy was the greatest and the lightest fucking guy that I've ever worked with ever in my entire life, and next to Brett. And so we're out there and we're all dying to go home for just a day and a half, right? We're just begging to go home. Everybody's beat up. And so everybody flies from. So the night before, I'm hanging out with the Men on a Mission. And we're in the Waffle House in downtown LA, right next to the Holiday Inn, right next to the LAX airport. And so we're in the Waffle House and we're eating. And, we've been out, we've had a few drinks, and smoked a couple joints and, I took a couple Valiums or something like that. And we weren't feeling no pain. And it was probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And in comes the 1, 2, 3 kid and Razor Ramon. And these fuckers are obliterated out of their mind. So they sit down and they ordered a bunch of food. I mean, Razor ordered a shit ton of food. And they had been taking somas all night, which are clisoprodals, which they don't really fucking hit you until you eat something. So they come in all somaed up and shit and drunk as a skunk. Order all this food. So Razor gets his oatmeal and he takes 3 fucking spoons of oatmeal and eats it. And next thing you know, he bends over and he goes to put an oatmeal in his mouth again. Oh, face first, right in this fucking bowl of oatmeal. And so me and men on a mission look at each other like, whoa, fuck, we're not going to save him. And we all three looked at the 1, 2, 3 kid and like, we're not going to fucking save him. If you don't save him, he's going to fucking die in his oatmeal. And so Sean Waltman grabs fucking Razor by his hair and pulls him up. And all you can see is fucking oatmeal everywhere, up his nostrils, in his eyes, in his ears. And he goes, "Ah!" And he fucking sucked all this oatmeal that was stuck in his mouth down his fucking throat. And it almost had to give him a Heimlich, right? But he almost died in his fucking oatmeal. So fast forward 4 hours. We're all at the airport. So everybody has to fly through Denver to get home. So we flew into Denver. There is a fucking huge snowstorm. Shut the whole fucking airport down. So we're all at the bar. We're drinking. Now everybody's on their way home. So everybody's fucking drinking. Everybody's, taking pills. And, I probably took 4 or 5 Valiums and maybe a pain pill or two. And I was drinking Heineken. And we're sitting in the middle of the airport, and, just laughing, fucking carrying on, having a good old time. I get up to take a piss. And, I'm kind of used to Owen fucking ribbing me and shit, because he's really the only one that could get away with it, right? And because Owen always did it in good faith. And so I left my beer. I got to take a piss. And I left my fucking Heineken on the table. And the 1, 2, 3 kids there, I think. Shawn Michaels was there. Adam Baum was there. I forget. There 2 or 3 other people were there. And I come back. I drink my fucking beer. And I ordered another one and another one. And so now, all of a sudden, I'm like, man, I'm fucked up. So I hear over the intercom that they're boarding my plane. It's like, I got to go, guys. So my buddy Adam Baum, he says, Horn, he says, call me when you get home, brother. He says, I'm worried about you. I says, all right, man. All right, I'll give you a call as soon as I get home. So I'm walking now towards the fucking gate. And it just seems like fucking slow motion. I looked up down the way to see what was coming towards me. And here come Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe. And it was like in slow motion. It like took them fucking forever to get to me. And I'm like, man, I wonder if they know that I'm fucked up, man. Swerving and shit, And so they get up close and Vince says, hey, Mike, how you doing? I said, good, boss. And he's like, enjoy your time off. See you in a couple of days. He says, yeah, you too. Take care, guys. And I was like, phew, fuck, I'm glad that was over. So now I get on the plane and I keep drinking because it's only an hour and 15-minute flight to Omaha. So I had a couple, 2, 3 more beers. I get home. I try to go to bed. I can't fucking go to sleep. I'm up all fucking night, man. I'm miserable. Can't fall asleep. And like so much hit me at one time that it had the opposite effect on me. And it should have killed me. I'm not kidding you. It should have fucking killed me. I might have had 15, 20 fucking pills in my fucking beer. Adam Baum told me that they were just fucking putting them in fucking one after the other. And he was like, I was legitimately worried about you. He told me this story later. He was like, I was legitimately worried about you, Horn. He said, I thought you were going to fucking die. He says, you're a fucking elephant, man. He says, we'll have to fucking harpoon your ass to put you down. He says, you had no fucking idea. And I really didn't. I had no idea. But yeah, man. So that was like one of my stories. And, shit, it's one thing taking what you're taking, but it's another thing when guys are putting 2 pills and 3 pills at a time in your fucking beer and you have no idea.
Yeah, I remember Duke saying you had to be superhuman to survive the amount of pills you had that day. But you also had an incident with Scott Hall, didn't you, where he slapped you in a match or
Yeah,
something?
fucking prick. You know, Scott Hall might have been a great worker and everything in this business, but a lot of people didn't see the Scott Hall that we seen every fucking night. He was a fucking jackass, fucking drunk motherfucker on drugs, all pilled up, slurring his words, can't stand up, and I had to wrestle him. I forget where we were at, but he had just come right out of fucking drug rehab, and he had dropped his belt to Double J before he went into drug rehab and came out. And I was his first match when he came out, and I was still undefeated at the time. And this was actually my first loss on record, was to Razor Ramon in a count out. So he was beat me up. The finish was he was on top of me. Boom, boom, boom. Turned his back to me. The roadie come down, starts shining the fucking belt. Distracted fucking Razor. Roadie had his attention. Razor turned his back on me. I get behind him, do the fucking Manteur fucking shuffle, charge him. Boom. He sidesteps, throws me over the top. I hit the roadie. Boom. Down for the count. I don't make it back up. That was my first loss. But in the match, he called the fucking spot. So I'll do whatever you want to do. I'm just that kind of guy. I'll do whatever you want to do. I just want whatever you do to fucking be realistic. And so we went out there and we called this original spot where I go to lock up. Boom, he ducks it. Boom, ducks it again. Lock up, boom, ducks that, ducks the fucking clothesline, spin around, boom. He open slaps me and throws his fucking toothpick in my fucking face. And his buddy Diesel talks about this. He's talked about this many times on different podcasts around. Might even have been on your podcast. And he said that he's back in the back. Diesel's telling the story. He says, I'm back in the back watching the monitor, watching Scott Hall wrestle fucking Manteur. And he said he did this spot, and he says he open hands slapped him. He said he slapped the fucking spit out of his mouth. To listen to Diesel tell it, he knocked the fucking shit out of me. And knocked me out for the way fucking Diesel told the fucking story. But what really happened was Scott Hall took a fucking liberty, tried to knock my fucking teeth out, couldn't. I shook it off, and then took his fucking head off. When we got in the back, I waited for that motherfucker to come through the curtain. I got right in his fucking face. We start pushing and fucking shoving. Agents were fucking pulling us apart. I said, fuck you, you fucking piece of shit, punk ass motherfucker. Do that shit right now, motherfucker. I'll knock you out. That's how I fucking... After that, my next match was, I think, leading up to Survivor Series or something like that. And I got beat by Bob Sparkplug Holly. When that happened, I packed my bags. I went home. Fuck you. I'm done. Because when Bob Holly beat me, people were fucking booing. I went out there and threw Bob Holly around like a fucking rag doll. And when he beat me, people knew that fucking shit was bullshit, because I just manhandled this fucker for like 8 minutes straight, and he got nothing in, got one thing in. He moved on something, hit me with that fucking missile drive kick, and he pinned me. Get the fuck out of Dodge. But hey, they're paying me, so I'm going to do what I'm told.
When they put you with Cornette, did you see that as a sign that you might get a championship push or something? Because he was...
Yeah, I mean, they were actually talking about doing a run with The Undertaker. And so when I wrestled these fucking jobbers, man, I beat the fuck out of them. Teddy DiBiase told me, he says, Mike, he says, when you're on with these jobbers, he says, you need to fucking beat the shit out of them. He says, even if some of it's for real, beat the shit out of them. That's what they're there for. They know that's what they're getting paid to do, is beat the fuck up. So go out there and beat them up. be the killer that you are. And so that's what I did. And I remember I used to do this thing I would call the forklift, where I'd fucking buckle you, you'd stagger out, I'd charge you, pick you up underneath your shoulder pits and drive you back in the fucking corner. But one time I picked this guy so fucking far up in the air, I didn't realize my own strength, and his fucking back of his head bounced off the fucking corner post and split his head wide open. This fucker was knocked out before he hit the ground. I had to smack him and wake him back up a little bit. Well, I could bring him to so I could pin him. But yeah, I've beat a few jobbers up. So I had kind of a stiff reputation in New York. And Bret Hart stepped up to the plate. Said, I'll work with them. Me and Bret had the fucking match of a lifetime. And they took the best part of the match off television. And when Bret seen it and found out about it, Bret fucking chewed fucking Vince out for the fucking leaving that shit out. He said, man, he says, this kid, everybody's giving this kid a fucking bad rep, and I go out there and have a fucking match of a lifetime, and you cut out the best fucking part of the match. That's just stupid. We're out there working hard for what? And so, you know, I had a few people go to bat for me, but, you know, the clique fucking ran everything. And so once I got in that spat with fucking Razor and wasn't going to take his fucking bullshit and stood up to him, you know, I knew that my days were fucking numbered at that point.
How were your experiences with Shawn Michaels overall?
Shawn Michaels was pretty cool. He came up to me one time and asked me if I was related to PN News. Just fucking flat right out. He said, Manteur, he says, there's a lot of rumors going around here. And he says, and I hate fucking rumors. He says, I need to just come out and ask. He says, are you related to PN News? And I said, no, why? He said, well, people say you guys are brothers or cousins. And he said, he's not wanted around here. And we don't want people like him around. And because I guess somebody said that he stole somebody's money or something when he was at WCW. I don't know. I wasn't there. I mean, only God and PN News knows, but I don't get in other people's business, like I said earlier. So I really don't give a fuck unless it happened to me or I experienced something. I'm okay. You know, I don't care like what your sexual beliefs are. Just don't rub that shit on me. I don't care. Just don't touch me. We don't got no problems. You do what you do, and I'll do me. And he came out and asked me, and I told him no. He was like, okay. He says, I'm glad I talked. He says, there's a lot of rumors. He says, yeah. He says, that's just what they are, buddies, rumors. I says, if you ever want to know something, just come and ask me, and I'll tell you. I ain't got nothing to hide here. I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. That's exactly what I told him. And he fucking popped on that shit. He loved it. He said, I've never heard that before. I said, yeah, I think it's a fucking Nebraska thing.
Now, you had one random appearance managing Goldust or bodyguarding Goldust in your hometown against the Ultimate Warrior.
Yes.
Any memories of working with the Ultimate Warrior, who people either seem to like?
Man. That was fabulous, man. Had a great time doing that. So what happened was Goldust wrestled somebody over in Europe for the Intercontinental fucking belt, and he hurt his knee really bad. Well, there was an In Your House pay-per-view. They already had it booked. It was the main event. And there was another main event, so it was kind of a co-main event. But still, they knew that Goldust wasn't going to be able to fucking wrestle. And so they said, hey, can you use your Bruiser Mastino gimmick, which is the gimmick that they should have fucking used from Jump Street. But, you know, Vince wants to be in control of every fucking thing. So he's not, I don't care how good of a gimmick you bring into him, 90 chances are he's not going to let you do it because it's not, number one, not his idea. Number two, it's his company. And number three, he just plain doesn't give a fuck. And so they asked me to do the gimmick, which I wanted to do to begin with in the company and to be Goldust bodyguard. And they says, well, we want you to go out, you know, be his bodyguard. And this is what we want to do, the cigar thing. He's going to put it out on his fucking chest. And then he's going to fucking knock him out of the fucking chair when he does. Come up behind him, bam, bam, bam. Get some fucking heat on him. Let him do his fucking warrior fucking spaz. And, you know, take a few bumps for him and fucking powder. And that's it. So he says, but we got to run it by him first because number one, we need to know if he's going to show up. Because at that time, the Warrior was known for not really showing up all the time. And so once he showed up, they ran it by him. And, you know, the Warrior had to come in and fucking talk to me first. He was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so then it went on and, you know, it was fucking great, man. I mean, I loved it. Goldust was fucking a trip to fucking work with, especially when he was doing that gimmick, right? He was fucking funny motherfucker. And the Warrior was great, man. Nice and easy. Went down just like we fucking said it would. And yeah, crowd fucking popped and they were happy. And, you know, everybody went home and I made a nice fucking big fucking chunk payday and it was all good.
And that was just a one-time thing. They never called you back.
Yeah, you know, it went so well that, you know, Goldust even said, he says, hey, Mike, he says, I hope we can do this again, brother. He said, this was fucking fun. He says, you'd be a great addition to Marlene and myself. And I was like, thanks, man. I said, I had a lot of fun too. I said, I appreciate you and let me help you out. You know what I mean? Thanks for the fucking bone, brother. And he was like, no, man. He says, you did all my work for me. He said it was easy, man. He says, and it went down without a hitch. And so we really thought that there was a chance that we would do something moving forward. Like, Jesus Christ, who's this big motherfucker just come out and tried to fuck the Warrior and the Warrior fucked them both, you know? Well, just stay tuned. Well, stay tuned to nothing. Because it was just a one-off fucking deal. So, you know, like I said, you know, if they want to use you, they're going to use you. If they want to push you, they're going to push you. If they want to fucking make you look like a piece of shit, they're going to make you look like a piece of shit. If they want you to fucking kiss Vince McMahon's bare ass in the middle of the fucking ring and you're willing to do it for a paycheck, well, then they're going to fucking make you do it.
Well, Steven Regal kept a job for a long time for doing that, so I guess it works out for some people. But a lot of people
Steven Regal is an ass kisser from way back, bro. I worked with him in the CWA, and I remember guys like Finley and St. Clair and David Taylor. They would say, "Man, Regal was fucking fat and just a fat piece of shit. We used to beat the shit out of him, man, and now he thinks he's one of us." And you know, Regal could wrestle though. You know what I mean? Regal will put it on you. He's a tough motherfucker. Don't get me wrong. He's a tough motherfucker, but he took an ass whooping to learn how to be a tough motherfucker. He took an ass whooping on a regular basis from these fucking, because Englishmen are brutal, bro. They will put your ass to fucking sleep. They will smack you and wake you up, and they will put you to sleep again, and they will put the boots to you, wake you up, and then they will put you to sleep a third time. I mean, I've seen fucking Dave Finley put somebody to fucking German to sleep like 5 times in one fucking match before. Absolutely ridiculous. And these people can't stop it. These fucking English wrestlers are for real, bro. For real.
How was your WCW tryout, and how was your whole experience? We always hear the backstage environment is kind of tense there, but you were only there for a show.
It was super intense, man. I mean, that was the fucking blind leading the blind over there. And they acted like that you were the next best thing. And then they just fucking didn't do nothing about it. I mean, my fucking tryout match was one of my best matches ever. And I didn't get the job. So, you know, I don't know, maybe you just weren't what they were looking for. Or maybe they thought that I was related to this guy or kissed this guy's fucking wife. I don't fucking know. But
was Scott Hall there at that point?
What's that?
Was Scott Hall in WCW at that point?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. So that was early 2000s when that happened. So, no.
And last question before we wrap it up here. A lot of people want to know about your tank gimmick with the Truth Commission. Why was that so short-lived? I heard Bret Hart hooked you up with that.
That's a fucking good question. I would really love to know that because I worked my ass off putting that fucking gimmick together. So I was working for Otto Vons in the CWA after I did the Manteur character about a year later. And I'm working and I come out of the fucking ring. Mastino telephone call. And I'm like, fuck. I look at the clock and I'm thinking, man, it's American time. It's early there. What the hell's going on? And so I'm freaking out. Boss, who is it? Otto says, Bret Hart, hurry up. I was like, Bret Hart? What the fuck does he want? So I said, hello? He was like, Mike. I said, yeah, Bret. How you doing, Bret? Hey, what's going on? Like, we were old pals, right? He's like, listen, man. He says, I got this idea. He says, I came up with it. I met this guy in South Africa who does the Kellogg's commercials in English. And he'd be a really good commandant, be a really good mouthpiece. But he doesn't know fuck all about wrestling or the psychology. And he says, and I got these other two guys, and one ended up being fucking Kurgan, and the other one was Bull Buchanan. He says, I got these other two guys that are fucking green as grass. He says, and you're a seasoned veteran. He says, I need you to, teach these three people how to do this gimmick. And I was like, well, okay. He says, I'm pushing you for this spot. He said, this spot is made for you. And he says, and I'm pushing this gimmick to Vince. He says, will you do it? Because it hinges on you. I said, yeah, Brett, I'll fucking do it, man. I can use the money. He was like, okay. He says, I'll be in touch. So I got back to the fucking States, and again, I was home for 3 or 4 days. And my phone rings, and it's the office. They brought me up, and Brett was there, and we had it fucking got it worked out, and they wanted me to teach Kurgan and teach Bull Buchanan and teach fucking the Commandant how to work this 6-man tag. And so that's what I did. We went to Memphis. We worked on it for 6-7 months. We were down there a long time. And it was stressful at times. The fucking money was the shits. And but I mean, I was under New York money, which none of the boys knew that. They thought that I was making the standard $800 a week or whatever the fuck we were making. It was nothing. And you had to pay for everything out of your pocket. So, but it's none of people's business what you're making and what they're making. That's not something people talked about. So we got on TV, and out of nowhere, they fucking drug test me. And they know that I'm a pot smoker. And they weren't tested at the time. And it was really funny because they gave me the cup. I tested. And they didn't even check the fucking test. I walk out of the fucking testing room, and Bruce Pritchard's right there. And he wasn't even talking to the tester. He was like, you failed the drug test. We're going to have to let you go. I was like, what? It's like, how the fuck do you know I failed the drug test? You didn't even talk to nobody. He said, I don't need to talk to anybody. He says, you failed the drug test. He says, get your things and go. I says, you know what, Bruce? I said, fuck you, you piece of shit. I said, you lying motherfucker, you're worthless. I said, after all the fucking hard work I did here, I said, fine, I'll take my fucking money and I'll go home. But fuck you. And I went home, and that was it. And they put my buddy, and I felt honored actually when I found out, because they put Luke Poirier in my spot, and he was the champ for Otto Vance. And fuck, I worked with Luke for 10, 11 years. So I loved him. We were fucking great friends. So I was happy to at least see my spot go to one of my fucking buddies, right? Who I lived with and partied with and wrestled with for fucking years, And I mean, wrestling in Europe was the best time in my life. It was like paradise every single night of the week. You lived out in the country. You pulled your camper around. You did what you wanted to do, and you showed up and you entertained the people. You went back and you partied and you drank and you barbecued until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You slept for 3 or 4 hours, got up, went to the gym, came home, cooked on the grill again, took a nap, went to fucking work and did it all over again. Who wouldn't love that life? I mean, you're making $335 a fucking day, tax-free. How can you complain? You can't. So I'm just thankful that God blessed me with all the ability that he has in my life. And he keeps, blessing me every day. I just moved to Florida in May, and my body's starting to feel better. And, living with my dad, my daughter, and we're loving life right now. So, it's all good, man. I can't complain at all. I'm here to breathe and share my story with you and all the Hannibal fans, right?
And you even had a character on Young Rock. Manteur.
Yes, I even, and I didn't even know it either. One of my buddies called, he said, "Big Mike, your ass was just on Young Rock, brother." And I'm like, yeah, that's fucking awesome, bro. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's how well fucking Manteur, that's how over Manteur is, motherfucker. He made Young Rock. That's what I'm talking about. And you know what? Kudos to The Rock. That's one story that we never talked about, is when I was doing the Truth Commission gimmick, when they brought us up to start television 1 month before we hit TV, they brought us up to Connecticut to the office to do the gimmick in front of all the fucking bigwigs if we had to on a daily basis, so they could all look at it and see. So they would tape us. We'd go through the whole ring intro, the whole fucking thing, because it was a process. You just didn't walk down the aisle and fucking get in the ring and wrestle. No, you had to fucking march down the aisle, and you had to march down the aisle in unison and around the ring. And I made up all the shit that we did in the ring, so we had to go through all that. So all that shit had to be in unison and on point every fucking time. So when we got to Connecticut and was, just putting the final touches on the gimmick before we hit television, that's when Rock came on the scene for the first time. So Dwayne's first matches, we were the guys that worked with Dwayne firsthand when he first went to New York, because we were doing our finishing touches to hit television, and they were just bringing him in. So those were his very first wrestling sessions for New York.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your time, and we'll definitely be open to having you on again sometime. You have some great stories. I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to say to the fans.
Man, I loved entertaining you people. I have a passion for wrestling. I love wrestling. And I would do it all over again just for you fans. Except I would have kicked the shit out of Scott Hall.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews.